find the footage.
I know. It's great to see this footage. Hello, everybody. I'm Evan Abrams. Welcome to the Motion Design Hotline. I'm joined, as usual, by Kyle Hamrick. Kyle, how you doing today?
Let's say spectacular.
Okay, great. That's what we
How
want.
about tremendous, terrific? Something that
Yeah.
starts with T because we are talking about our text templates and ending your turmoil, making it a success
Yeah.
instead.
Tune in for this tutorial.
Yep.
Live onto stage. So, welcome to Adobe Live. This is the Motion Design Hotline. The Motion Design Hotline is where you bring your motion design problems to us, and we attempt to solve them. And we turn it into a show. Yeah, we to solve them. And today is all about temperature and templates and putting the stuff on the screen, a thing that After Effects is becoming more and more and more dominant at. So we figured we might as well talk through some of what are some like edge cases and some new opportunities that open up as more and more things happen with the beautiful updates. So I don't know. There should be a little bit of an adventure. So if you're watching right now and you have problems with any of your template stuff, anything that vexes you, you let us know, and we will derail what we're doing to fall right into that.
You can distract us just that easily. And yes, I am seeing that the Behance chat is maybe not functioning right now, so I'll keep an eye over there. Or maybe just hop over to YouTube if you're on Behance and you're trying desperately to chat and having no success. While we're talking about this, other ways to reach us, you can, of course, talk to us on the socials. You can see below us. You can send us at motiondesignhotline.com. We have a lovely form that you can fill out to ask us questions and even attach project files. Or you can also get at us on the Adobe Live Discord, which is linked in the chat or below this video. Is that all the things? I think that's all the things.
That is true. Yeah. If you have a topic that is widely different from this topic, definitely use the form, and you can send us files, and we'll look into it. We'll look into it is what we'll do. We definitely won't store it in a spreadsheet and come back to it at our convenience, as we maybe are doing with some of this episode. So like I said, we're gonna spend the next hour together doing this. So if that's what you're into, stick around. And like I say, if you have things you want to get at us in the comments, then let's do that. So we might as well start at the very, very beginning. We always want to assume that people have maybe never opened After Effects before or have never done Mogrt before. My glasses are super dirty.
Let's assume they haven't done Mogrt, but I think some familiarity with After Effects is going to be helpful here. But even so, you could be pretty much a beginner and get on board with the basic version that I'm going to show you in a minute.
That's true. I was going to say, so a computer is a kind of magic box that is...
Well, if we're going to start at the beginning, I think we need to talk about like the birth of language itself.
That's true. Okay, so language is a series of symbols that people use to... No, we're going to cut off to Kyle's screen and do something actually useful.
All right, so I am here in After Effects, and I'm just going to kind of show you the basics of how you could make even if you have very little After Effects experience, you can actually make a template that can be really useful for you. Now, there's plenty that you can make directly in Premiere, and if you're watching and you want to see some of that, let us know, because we can make some of that happen too. But we are operating on the assumption that you want to do sort of upper level stuff with your templates. You want more than just some words in a box, but some words in a box is a great place to start. So let's do that. I'm just going to grab my type tool up here, click in here, and let's say we're making something with people's names. All right. So,
and if you could do it in song, I think that would be good. 1, put my text in a box. 2.
Whoa, that's getting spicy. I am going to call out this this little kerning issue right here. Just let's see if that gets any better. E's and V's are always a little bit problematic. One thing about templating stuff is you do often lose the ability to make these kind of individual kerning tweaks. So I'm going to let that be, even though it really bothers me. I mean, I could adjust it here and then, we'll see. Quite relevant. If you saw the way that the Pope's name was carved onto the top of his tomb, apparently whoever did that does not have a great grasp of kerning, and I feel a little bit bad for the Pope. Anyway,
Well, I got to see this now.
you do. We'll look that up in a minute. Okay, so um, so we're going to make ourselves like a basic little name box, okay?
Okay.
And there are ways we will probably show them to you later that you can make a super hyper aware box. But you know what? You don't even need to know anything fancy to do that. You can just go under Effects and Presets and look for Text Box. And there are actually two different ways to do it. You could make a shape, or I'll do this one with masks and effects. So my layer is selected, so I could just double click this, or I can drag it onto that or onto the text layer here. All pretty straightforward stuff. And you'll see it makes me a little box. Yay. Let's go ahead and just kind of look through some of these controls it creates. Push that offset up a little bit. I'm fine with the rounding. Let's go ahead and choose a super amazing color for this, like our brand dark blue maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe make the line a little thicker. Let's say that is exactly what we want. Great. So as it is, this is already listening. So if I type a different name in here, then you see it adapts to that. And if this were all we wanted to do, we could actually send this into what's called the Essential Graphics panel and then start setting this up to be a template where we can change it other places.
Hmm.
Excuse me. Because right now, obviously, we can change this text here in this project, but you might want to use this in other places here in the After Effects project without needing to make 1,000 copies of this composition, or you can use this in Premiere. Excuse me.
Oof.
Yep, it's getting there. All right. So there's a couple of places you can open this. You can right click and choose Open in Essential Graphics. That's my preferred for reasons I'll explain in a second. Or you can go up to Window, Essential Graphics. You just need to have this panel open, and now you can do it. Now, here in After Effects, I will point out you can actually open other compositions in this panel while you're working on something else. Don't do that unless you know what you're doing. Here be dragons. So,
That's a tease for something coming up later.
yeah. So I typically like to do Open in Essential Graphics right here, just to kind of make sure you're working on the same thing. So all you have to do now is just choose which properties you want to be editable by yourself or someone else. So one easy way to do this is just click the Solo Supported Properties button right here, and it will open up literally everything that you could send up to this panel. So there's a lot, yes, but I'll just kind of help you out. Source text is what you want if you want to be able to retype this and edit this text. So you just take that and drag it up. Ding, there we go. Let's give this a name. We'll say like name. That is the person's name that they need to enter into this box, and then it will update. And then let's find the maybe the fill color of this box. That might be a thing we want to be able to change. And maybe the stroke color. There we go. And so these are the things that are going to get passed through in this template. Now, if we were sending this out to Premiere, we could give this a name and export it. But let me just show you something real quickly, because you can also take this and nest this into another composition in After Effects. And now you have the ability to, let's just close this real quick, to see only those couple properties as what are called essential properties. And we've talked about these a lot before. They might break your brain a little bit too, but crucially, you can see them down here in the timeline or over in the properties panel. And again, you can update this to someone else's name, like the fine Jack, who is helping us out in the chat today. And then we could, update these colors to something else. And there we go. There's our updated our updated template here in After Effects, and now I could make other versions of this without affecting my master composition that I created. But let's say we want to send this out to Premiere. So let's open this back up, and let's call this like Hotline name template, okay? And then I'm going to save my project and export this as a motion graphics template. Let's tell this to go to my local templates folder. You can include a video preview if you want, but I haven't animated this or done anything, so there's really no point in that.
Yeah,
and
pretty
I'll just,
static template.
yeah, pretty basic, but you can add whatever you want to this. And then here I am over in Premiere, just in a blank timeline, just so you can kind of see. If I go to graphics templates, assuming that I am sorting by recent, which is my preference here, I can just drag this into a timeline. And sure, we'll go ahead and update the sequence to have those settings. And then with that selected, you'll notice my properties panel up on the top right has those same properties that I established in After Effects. And so now I can set this back up for Evan, and I can change colors to something wacky here. Get the idea. So it's just that simple to create a template. Obviously, you're probably going to want to make some more animation and all that, but these are the basics.
Yeah,
One thing I Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, like, I think critically, a lot of here's where people kind of get tripped up. I think
Hmm.
is one, unlike other properties in Premiere, you cannot keyframe them. So
Yes.
we must always only input static values. Now, it could be
Yes.
any kind of values, and values could mean all kinds of things. Also, I think I just had my AI enabled camera start doing things, so it's going to be super
Oh,
creepy in a
yep.
minute.
Yep.
Oh dear. Oh boy. We're going for a ride. I'll fix that in a minute. But the point is, a lot of the edge cases that people run into is one, I can't animate any of the properties
Hmm.
that I've brought into Premiere, so I can't change that. Therefore, any animation changes you want to make, you have to be able to express them as a static value.
Hmm.
And then the other thing is there are just things that do not carry over between the two of them. So like right now, you couldn't change the font of my name in there, right? That's
Yeah.
just
So I
not
was
a
I was
thing.
just about to
Yeah,
show an easy way to pass that through,
cool.
and thus how you might make an update. Because maybe um, Evan's like, "Hey, Kyle, I love that, but I wish that I could change the typeface and maybe the sizing." I'm like, "Okay, well, let's hop back to After Effects real quick and help you out with that." Now, text properties in particular, you might notice this little edit properties clickable right here. And if I click that, I can enable custom font selection, font size, and faux styles like faux italic, faux bold. I'm going to leave that turned off for now. But you'll see that adds a few more controls here. And I like that. That's great. I'm going to go ahead and re-export this and just save over that previous version and hop back to Premiere. And now I just need to kind of grab that same one again. You could actually replace the previous one, just like replacing a clip. But now, see, I've got that font selection and bold and font size. And so I still have the ability. Now, I haven't really built this smart enough to fully adapt to like the full range of font sizes and all that. But you'll see that I can change this. I could pick a totally different typeface. And one one thing that's great about this is now this is super flexible. But if I were handing this off to, say, an edit team, I might not want them to be able to choose this typeface because it's possibly way outside of the brand.
Mm.
So, there are a lot of sort of restrictions that we could build into this. And this does start getting kind of codey. We use what's called expressions, which is probably going to be a lot of the rest of this episode. But um, so there are ways to pass this through in a pretty easy way. It just kind of gives different controls to the user than you might always want. Same thing with these color pickers. Like I could choose, some pretty awful colors here that might just be very hard on your eyes, right?
Mm.
Or we could pass through controls that only give you the option to choose between like two branded color schemes. It's just a question of what your build needs to do.
Yeah, and like critically with colors, right? What are they going to do? Well, they'll just use the eyedropper tool to sample something. It's like, don't do that. Don't introduce a margin of error into your editor's life.
Yeah, and that's also might be harder for them because now they have to bring that reference in from somewhere every time. So it maybe instead of having a color picker, you could make it so they just have another drop-down control here that's like, blue, red, yellow, and those are specific blue, red, and yellow that are established for your brand with specific hex codes, and you could build that in After Effects so that these are exactly what that person needs to touch. Um, actually, I have an example for exactly that here.
Yeah.
Um, so this is for a live event a couple years ago, and you're sort of announcing money at the end. And I have this one built so that there's a one layer here that is sort of this paper texture, and then another layer that's the text. And this is sort of older, so it's using kind of an older method. But you can see here, I've just got three different color choices, like light blue, dark blue, yellow, and one control here that is choosing those. I would do that as a drop-down control now, but that's same
Yeah.
the same logic applies.
Yeah, a static numeric control has come
Mhm.
out of the thing. Okay, I hope people get the idea of that is what template is, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you
let's
want to
let's
springboard off of that into something more interesting,
I shall. I
or
will.
you want me to explain anything before you get into scary stuff? I don't know.
No, no, no. We're gonna get let's get
Okay.
scary. So first kind of edge case that I want to explore is this one. So we just
Mhm.
talked about text. What if, just imagine, could you imagine
I
that
can.
we're having a beautiful story time. Once upon a time, there was a template, and we wanted the first letter of each word to be a unique character that is different from the rest of that word. So in this case, this is that kind of, very scripted first letter, and then the rest of them are actually readable. In this case, we got the K of Kyle, right? And then the H, apparently that's an H of
Yeah,
Hamrick.
kind of like a W or maybe like a sailing ship. I can't quite tell.
Hard to say, but according to this font, which is called Luke, thick, thick 200, Luke thick. We could have thin. Oh yeah. Sorry, it doesn't really change the thickness of the font itself. It's which side of it is
Uh,
particularly emboldened. Anyway, the point about this is these are unique fonts. So, but if we change one singular static value to, let's see, who's hanging in the chat with us? We've got Ryan.
yeah, how about Ryan? I bet that S will look nice.
Well, apparently there's something wrong with the S because it looks like that.
Well, maybe there's something wrong with Ryan. I mean, look,
What?
yeah,
How? How could a script font not have a pretty dank
Ryan.
S? There we go. Here we go. We'll go back to the Luke crying. That's not what we want. Anyway, the point is that's what an R is. What a nasty thing. What a font. Look, we're not throwing shade on the Luke font. I think a lot of it actually looks good, but this is definitely not an R. It's 100% not an R.
Not built for legibility, it seems. Yeah.
Exactly. But that's not the point of these things. The point of these things is to hide little creatures or whatever in your words, and so you can really illustrate that manuscript, and you'd have nasty little Bosch freaks jumping around. But in this case, so this is the old-timey way that we would have to do this, is one text layer basically powers all of that. So there we go. That's my name, right? And one layer is being referenced by these 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. So this is the old-timey way to do it, and it does have some benefits to it. Most notably that these things can all have an individual thing to it. It's a little bit easy to animate if you want these all doing something kind of unique and different. The first letters, right, are separate and unique layers, which means you can easily put a text box around them if you so desired. All of that is available. And the process of getting there might elucidate some interesting ideas for you, perhaps, which is, let's go to the first letter of the first word. A great layer. First word, first letter. So within that, we have the source text. And when you want two sources to look at each other, you just pick whip them to point at each other. That's it. So this becomes that. But critically, it is the content of the thing that goes, right? The style doesn't go. So
Mhm.
this I could change my original. It's Ariel. It's this one, Araya, which I think is an app for celebrities to date each other. This is Asphalt. This is Baskerville. And none of that is transferred over because it is a separate amount of information. The content is different from the style. We're going to access the style in a bit, but I just want you to know they're two separate and distinct objects. But as you can see, the variable called myText is pointing at input name, just source text to source text. What do you think? And then here's where things get a little bit weird. The first letter of the first name uses the split, what do we call this? Operation, I think.
I believe I warned you that we were going to get a little nerdy today, and it is happening quickly.
Yeah. I just joined and don't know what it's about. Harper, you're not alone. We're talking about expressions. We're talking about templates. We're talking about code, cheat codes of our lives. So split, this is kind of a JavaScript function. Everything in here is JavaScript-y. So myText.split, and then you put in the argument inside the parentheses, where do we split? Whence do we split, right? And in this case, it is whenever a space happens. That's when I want you to do the split. So you run into this character, split, right? And that means you're going to make a new thing. And so that variable is called myArray. So what has happened is split has said every time I see the space, I am going to make a kind of array that is this, comma, that. And if I had more and more and more, you could just split it up. Bam, 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 bam. So you could turn an entire sentence into an array of words if you so desired. So just something to know. There's also symbols for line breaks, the many different forms of line break, the too many confusing forms of line break. We're not going to talk about it. Let's do it basic for now.
It goes quite deep, and yeah, we don't have time for all of it today.
No one ever does. And then they'll change what it is, and you don't know what keyboard inputs someone was using, so you have to account for all of them. And anyway, so that's because the return key and the enter key produce different things. So myText.split, I've now created an array, and now I'm taking only the first part of the array, which logically, as we all know, is the 0th part of the array. Commonly, the address at the start of the street is 0. That is because that's how JavaScript organizes its universe. That's because Cartesianally, 0, 0 is a place. And remember, 0 is a place. So in this case,
I think that's the first time we used Cartesianally on this show before.
We usually talk about non-Euclidean math on here because we are, of course, eldritch beings. But in this case, we are dealing with the reality put out by René Descartes. I type, therefore I am. And in this case, the 0th position is that. Now, the other position, logically, is the 1th position, the first position. And so if we look at the second word and we crack into that, you see same thing. We have to input the same text. We do the same thing, but we take the 1th position, the first one. I don't say first because that's confusing. It's better to say the 1th and the 2th.
Number 1 is the second.
Exactly. And 2 is 3. So that's how we do if you want to split them out into words. This word, that word. And so each of these have taken the same way in order to split off. Tap EE to look at the thing you put expressions on. So that's splitting off the same source text for each. I only want the first letter of a thing. Therefore, what I'm going to use is a little bit of just remove the other words by using an animator here. So you can just animate by scale. I like to use scale because it actually shrinks everything nice and down. And then
the bounding box moves, and as opposed to opacity, which would not do that.
Yeah, which will bring us joy. We just use a range selector using the index based on the words. Oh, wait, that was removing the other word. That's not a thing. This is the other one that we want. This is index looking at a range of 1. So we're only taking the first one of those, which, in this case, 0 to 1 is exactly the way you would expect it to work. I hope that makes sense. But anyway, we're using text animators to separate them apart, and then we're using a series of sort of alignment expressions to bring them exactly where we want them. Yada, yada, yada. Oh boy, that's a lot of work to make that happen. Wouldn't it be better if this was all on one layer? I think so.
Yeah, objectively, yes.
Because all I have to do is type in a new thing, which if we remember our original thinking, how do I turn this into a thing that we can simply influence, right? And what we're going to be doing is just typing in a new word. So if we typed in Kyle.
Hey, that's me.
Yep, there's you. And as you can see, it's done a good job.
Looks perfect. Yep.
It looks good to me. But the controls on this, by turning them into numeric controls, are we want to know which character and how many characters after that. So which character, how many characters after it. Which character, boom, 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 boom. There we go. How many characters after it. Now, similarly, if I started to add spaces, burp, 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 it's a different character now, right? Because the
Spaces are characters.
Sometimes New York is the third character on this, but in this case, it's not. So boop, 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 boop. You go and find it. There it is. So an editor could really easily dial this in per thing. And all of our animation is based on an animator that is looking at lines, and it's animating per line. So nothing needs to be changed about the animation. Type in a new thing, pick the letters, you're done. And the spacing between the things is done. But how? I hear you asking, good people, how, Evan, does this work? And I've wanted to say this the whole episode, Kyle, with style. That's how you do
it. Beautifully done.
With style, mon cher. Shout out to Gambit. Who's perhaps a bit of a toxic.
Ooh, you know what? May now someday get his own movie finally.
Sweet. Would love that. Yeah. Excellent choice of actor to play Gambit. Probably the ideal. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, after setting up all of these expressions here, none of that is particularly germane. What is important is to know that text.sourceText.style is where we're going to go in order to then add the rest of these things. And after this, you'll notice that we just go full stop and then a thing, full stop and then a thing. These could all be organized one after each other, blah, 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 into a just giant run-on sentence. There's no reason that this couldn't be.
Yeah. But we're human beings, and that's not how...
Yeah, it would hurt us to have to just enjoy things that way. So instead, we're going to be kind to ourselves. We're going to put them on different lines. But just know that because there is no termination, this semicolon, then... the line doesn't terminate, the line keeps going. So just the organization is just for us. But what we're doing is I'm saying set font. I'm saying set what the font is. And I'm saying set what the size is. Then set what the font is, set what the size is. And then set the leading of this thing. Sure, why not? And I'm really just pointing at these variables, which are then pointing at effects. So the special leading is just bringing in this number here, which is allowing this value here, the leading, to change. Which, Kyle, did you know that it's because they used to put lead in between the different lines?
I sure did.
Typesetting?
I was having a debate with some folks about why it's called kerning and tracking in that. I mean, obviously you'd have to have different names, but would they use perhaps the same lead pieces to...
no,
I mean,
they would use
tracking would have been
corn.
like spreading the word across. You know, you'd have a finite width that you can work it in, but you'd want to make sure that they're even.
Yeah.
So
it's because they would take kernels of corn and drop them
there
into
you go.
the
Perfect.
typesetting machine. And the tracking.
I wish they were called cobs.
Yeah, well, that's when you put too many kernels next to each other.
Yep.
The tracking, of course, is because they would take the cat that lives in the print shop and put its paw tracks down, and that is the
okay.
So
Gotcha.
hopefully that makes sense for everyone.
Yeah,
if you want to learn more,
help.
Head over to Upper Canada Village or I want to say somewhere in Colonial Williamsburg to learn about letterpress. So that's what we're doing. We're basically splitting these things apart. Now, the other fun bit of business on here is the first part of the arguments here is literally just saying, which font am I looking at? And so we type that in. Those are set in stone. And then Set in stone. Kind of like that thing we talked about earlier.
Set in lead.
Yeah, and then we get into, and I've left the little variables in where it says s equals and n equals. You don't need those, but all it's doing is saying, when do I start doing this, and how long do I keep doing it? That's what these two other arguments are saying. If you don't have these other arguments, it assumes I'm doing it for the whole thing, right? But in this case, we are saying, why don't you go ahead and start at this character, the 0th character, of course, and go for one next character, and that's how far you're going to be doing. We're literally defining a kind of range. We're almost making our own little range selector in here using this. And that allows us to set a special font and a special size for these particular things. And because we have made those into a static numeric thing, that thing can then be brought into our motion graphics template. The joy of this is truly that you can just type something and that'll change. It's also a lot lighter, so this is going to take a lot less time to load, and it's just easier to animate and manipulate and make changes. If the editor comes in and says, I don't like Luke Thick 200, I want Luke Thick 400, that's an easy change to make at this juncture. The other thing is like, oh, wait, I wanted to change what the font of the whole ding-dang thing is. Yeah, I know. Me too. So I'll just go ahead and do that. Now, everything but the stuff getting special treatment is getting that treatment. So that control can also be given. Yeah.
And there's a good way to think about this. So these expressions that Evan has put into the source text, those are overriding whatever properties you have set in the actual character, the text character panel, or the paragraph panel. So, and that includes when you saw me, well, and Evan has it up on his screen too, the little font selection that is there in the essential graphics panel there. So that is effectively the same as what is in the character panel. And then these expressions that he has down there in the timeline, those will override whatever those settings are on the particular properties that he's calling out to, and then potentially just for the ranges that he is specifying.
Yeah, and
so hopefully that helps it make a little more sense.
Yeah, and also see the bounding box? Sick bounding box, bro. That is the size of this. Weirdly, though, when I select the text, it is selecting the old time text, but that doesn't matter.
The unoverridden version, yes.
Yeah. Which doesn't matter for us because we're never going to select it in use, and if we need this dimensionality, we can get it. So hopefully that kind of makes sense about how you would do special kind of, not like special character in terms of having to hammer on your keyboard to make those weird symbols, but this is how you can make characters look more special for your story time stuff. So there's an edge case. Hope that helps.
And of course, if you only need to make one name that looks this way, you don't need to worry about any of this code stuff. Just make it like that. Select the one character, change the typeface, move on with your life. But if you need to make 50 names with this styling, that's when you want to build a system like this so that it is workable for you and you don't have to manually make 50 names with those little...
Yeah. But in the old way that I talked about, this is still fairly relevant, especially if what you are going to be doing is replacing these with a composition or an image or something else, right? Like if these were little animated dragons or something, and they were, no, Kyle, I'm pitching my excellent thing to HBO where it's all about nasty scribes who have a lot of interpersonal conflict as they copy manuscripts in the 1400s.
We need a title.
What we'll see, they live in a scriptorium, and I was going to say unscripted, but that's probably already something. So it's going to be shot like a mockumentary, and we're going to see just, you know what, check out the movie The Hours, and that will explain to you everything I'm talking about.
Perfect.
Let's go back to Kyle's screen and learn something else.
Okay, so as Evan showed you, you can use these to override specific properties. And one, as you saw on my previous one, you can click in here and you can enable a size adjustment. And one thing that I often like to do is use those exact kind of expressions Let me see if I can size that up for you here. Um, you could do the exact same thing with those in pretty simple fashion here. I've just connected this to a little slider control that you can see down at the bottom of my screen or right here. And so that way you could dial that up and down. But then you might be like, well, Kyle, why would you bother to do that when you could have set it with this other control that already exists? Well, again, we want to talk about like the control that you can have here. So if I open this in the Essential Graphics panel, I could feed that slider out to my user. And one really useful thing you can do here is edit the range of this. So instead of giving someone just the ability to set this to any size, I could know that the template only works if this is between 70 and 90, or those are like the brand standards that the text is supposed to be within this range. And so
Mm.
building in these kinds of restrictions is why you might want to do it with code instead of just that kind of all access, you know, control that you'd get there.
Yeah, that
Um,
sweet fast pass so they can really
yeah,
jump the
yeah.
line. You could even, yeah, if you stored all of the values that were permissible in an array and then only allowed people to choose of the array.
Well,
Hmm.
that's a pretty good segue to what I'm about to show here,
Okay.
and what we kind of hinted at already.
See, folks, we
Um,
plan these shows.
yeah, and you know, just to go ahead and throw this out here. So if all of this seems like very mysterious to you, a friend named Nick Dean and I put together a tutorial that you can actually watch. Let me grab that. Drop that link for you here. I'm dropping that over on YouTube. Jack, if you could be so kind as to share that around. You could watch this and get sort of a more step-by-step walkthrough of all of this in case any of the details that we cruise by today are confusing you too much. But one of the things that I really like to use this kind of stuff for is setting the alignment because since we're talking about ye olden days, let's say that I was building a text template and I wanted the ability to set it, you know, centered, left, or right aligned. Now I could set this up with um, a little drop-down menu here, and you can see I left these just barely on, but I have to create three different versions of the same thing and kind of turn their opacity on and off, and that's just clunky. So let's say that we want to build that directly into this on a single layer. So let's go ahead and just build that from scratch. I'm going to start out by grabbing a drop-down menu control from my effects and presets here. I just searched for that. And I'm just going to drop that right onto the layer. And then let's go ahead and name that um, alignment. Doesn't really matter. You can name it whatever you like. And I'm going to just do left and right on this one for ease, but then we'll get to the third possibility in a minute. So I'm just going to set this to left and right, and then we don't need this third option, so I'll just click this little minus button and delete that, okay? So now notice the 1 and 2 right here. So these drop-down menus, helpfully, start at 1. So we're actually going to be referencing these numbers. So if I want to look at the first option, whatever that's named, that's going to be number 1, and the second option is going to be number 2, okay? So
Sometimes it starts at 0, sometimes it doesn't.
yep. Okay. So you saw what we were doing a second ago, and let's just build this one from scratch. So I'm going to create a variable. Here, let me zoom in just a bit on this. Oops, so that you can see me type better. Okay. Oh, that's temporary. I'm going to create a variable called my text, and that's just going to equal this source text property before the expressions. Okay. And then we're going to create another variable called align select. And I'm just making these names up. You could call it Gregory if that's what you like. I'm just going to point this to that little menu control that I just built, okay? And so if align select equals 1, if it's set to number 1, right? Then we're going to, let's make another variable just to call it here. Let's call it align result, okay? Equals align left. else align result equals align right. So we're kind of saying if it's set to a certain thing, you're going to do this result. If it's set to anything else, you're going to do this other result. So then let's call out to, we need to sort of establish our style here. So we're going to say my text, that thing we said at the beginning, dot style, and then say set justification, which is what After Effects calls this. And then we just need to say align result, because I established align result is going to either tell us to go left or right based on that drop-down menu, right? And let's see if I thought through this correctly. Yep. So if it is set to, if the menu is set to the first choice, which is left, it's going to be left aligned. If it's set to the second choice, which is right, it's going to be right aligned. There we go. So you just have to kind of think through the logic of what you're doing. And obviously have some understanding of what the code enables, but hopefully that is sort of a straightforward approach. You could use something similar for any of these other properties as well. Now, it does get a little more complicated when you're adding ranges and all that, but you could set, for Evan's example, you could do something very similar and set up a drop-down menu that allows you to choose which typeface was being applied to those first characters. Okay, be a very similar thing. You would just have to kind of set up what those different options call out to. If it's set to number 1, it's going to call out to, Comic Sans. If it's set to number 2, it's going to call out to Papyrus, whatever you like, right?
Yep.
You just have to kind of establish what the choices are, and then tell it what to do based on the results. There are ways to get this. When you have more choices, there are more elegant ways to do it. Like this is called an array. And so this is maybe a little less human readable, but it's a better way to code it. Instead of saying, if it's this thing, then do this, but if it's this thing, then do this, yada, yada, yada. Instead, I'm just kind of aligning. I created a little array. So the first option is align left, then align center, and align right. And then based on what we're doing with our drop-down menu that now has left, center, and right in it, we're just calling out to that. And then this little bit right here is because one of them starts counting at 0, 0, 1, 2, because of the way code is, but the menu starts at 1. So basically we're saying, look at my menu, -1, so that if it's set to 1, you're going to do 0. If it's set to 2, you're going to do 1. If it's set to 3, you're going to do 2. And yes, that's a little confusing. It's just the way it works. But you can create a pretty elegant little justification control here, which again could be easily passed up to the Essential Graphics panel and fed out into a template. So I don't know, Evan, I've got my event board here. Do you have another thing that you wanted to show? Looks like we have about 15 minutes left.
Yeah, I think I want us to talk about glassmorphism
today.
Yeah,
get into that.
Let's if you've heard about skeuomorphism, and we're hoping that we would get more of that, that's what we can do. So glassmorphism is essentially the idea that you will have a kind of hazy or frosty zone going on, and that will define specifically like an area. So there we go. Now we've really frosted that out, and that's pretty slick. Now, one of the issues, and this is
I think the frosting actually makes it less slick.
Yeah, that's true. That actually makes it a little bit rough, so that the refracting, etc. This is from friend of the show, Nachi, and they were asking specifically about issues around the frosted glass, but also about, allowing editors to not just add drop shadows, making things heinous when they get the templates, because, a light thing over a light background, a dark thing over a dark background. Now, what Kyle just said about picking from lists, that's a great way to have light mode and dark mode. Boom, do that. Mm-hmm. This move is a little bit more complicated, and one of the issues that you're going to run into with these templates is that we cannot pass anything but opacity between each other, between After Effects and Premiere. So if I put, for example, an adjustment in here, so if I was trying to, go ahead and delete that. If I was trying to have this and I wanted to use the blending mode of overlay or something, that's not going to happen. That information doesn't come with us when we turn this into a template. We can do
just to be
yeah,
clear, it doesn't come through as a Mogrt. If you're still using this within After Effects, then it would. There's just
yeah,
some specific boundaries that you have to understand depending on where it's going.
yeah. We cannot particularly cross that boundary, which is unfortunate. Now, what is a little bit lovely is that we can replace media. So my workaround for this is the following. This template is actually using the background footage once, twice, thrice. So it is happening 3 times. The replacement thing, replacement thing, replacement thing, these are all the same thing. They are all this. That is the only thing inside a container. Now, if we look at, let's see, background getting frosted, I'm going to go ahead and remove that as a control. We are looking at frosted glass replacement. And I have 1, 2, 3 things that I want to replace. And that is because this one is just what's in the background. That's what's hanging out back there. The next one is what is inside the frosted glass. And then in my case, I went a third one and I did it again with the non-frosted, the cleaned glass inside. So
You would.
Yeah, exactly. I like to be a little bit extra. So in this case, what we've got going on is 3 instances, and you could have 5 of them if you want. You go totally crazy. But if we change what is inside this particular thing, then everything else is going to change. So that is the thing to think about. Now, we talked about very early that primary is the thing that is being exported as the Mogrt. That means that anything nested within the primary can also be edited and changed. So I just drag this footage, boink, up like that, and that is going to give an editor the ability to change the thing that is nested inside the other thing, which means the 3 things can be changed immediately with 1 change of the single object. Now that's pretty helpful, especially in this case, because we don't want to mess around too much with that stuff. Let's go over to Premiere and see how that works. So once you export it, you end up with this situation. So we've got our frosted glass replacement. I've just dragged this Mogrt down onto the timeline, and we can enjoy bloop, that thing coming up. So if we go into the graphics and we go into the, where's my properties? There we go. The background getting frosted. When you queue up for a froster, you can snap in just about anything you ding dang want in there. And that is going to replace all 3 of those things at once with this. Now, one of the issues you're going to do if you start setting stuff like this up is we don't have a huge amount of influence over the timing. We're literally filling the thing with the footage. So it's not a perfect solution. It's not super great. But if you have a B-roll with frosty callouts on top of it, this will get you there, right? This will get you to the thing, because if you double click this zone, boop, boop, we enter into a secret thing. Secret, I guess.
I'm going to call it a pocket dimension.
Yeah, we've entered into a pocket dimension in which we see BG getting frosted as a sequence. Well, where is this sequence? I don't see that thing happening. Well, it's in here. It's somewhere, right? You just get there by double clicking over there, and that's what brings you here. But you can put a whole bunch of stuff in here if you want. So you can just put things on top if you want.
It is a sequence with layers.
It's a sequence. You could do whatever you want. You could put more Mogrts in here. You could do whatever. But critically, see this cut out part, this hashed zone? That's when the template ends. So we could literally be assembling in here an entire sequence of things that goes on. Now, unfortunately, right, we're sort of doing it backwards, that we're filling out the inside of the thing when the animated elements are what comes on top of it, which can be a little bit confusing. But if this is, again, this is a callouts over B-roll, and it's literally just, well, we're producing the clips that will then go into the sequence. So it's going to be flower, fact about flower. The timing about when the fact about flower comes on is immaterial because we're just going to hang out on it long enough to trim the front off. Because Mogrts can be trimmed like anything else, right? You just grab it and you trim it around. So that's totally valid way of working with this. But it's giving you the glassmorphism type of vibes that I think people were after. Whew. Kyle, I wanted to talk really fast because I also wanted to mention that descenderists problem that
Yeah. See if you can blast through that. We've got a lot of other examples set up here, but see what you can do.
I know we brought way more things than we needed today. Also, being on the half hour, I totally got confused about how long to talk, so really messed that one up. Another kind of real common problem that you're going to run into, and that is my text box does what the top one does. It starts tiny and then gets big. As soon as that freaking P shows up, it changes height, and as soon as the D shows up, technically we're changing height, and this is bad. I don't want that. I want it to behave like the bottom one behaves.
While you're talking through that, I'm going to see if that preset accounts for these.
It doesn't. I know one of them. One of the text boxes definitely does not. So this. How do we get it to do like that and not like that? Right? Source rect at time. They both have the same source rects. They're both doing the exact same thing. Well, how is it so different? Well, it's a simple life hack that you can do with this, and it all comes down to when we are making choices. So my text.source rect at time being the important thing, would come in as the time, assuming now, and then don't worry about the true part, but when we are sampling it is always part of what goes in these brackets, and then what we are sampling is here. So the width of, in this case, the time, which is the default mode, that's what's happening in the top. It's just saying, I sample when the time is, when the current time indicator is. But on the other one, I'm saying sample the X when it is, so the horizontal component, take that from now, but take the Y from the future. Take it from 10 seconds down the road, which, yeah, I know, it's a little time warp. That's when everything is animated on, and therefore that is where the height is exactly when we would want it. So it is a method by which you can achieve something very simply. We're not checking if there's P's and D's. Jake Bartlett has an excellent YouTube video about the descending problem, I believe, and so you should definitely check that out if you want more of that, which is I believe his method is checking for P's, D's, etc. As it goes through. But anyway, there's a lot more coding that can be done for that. Oh, and there's a lot more coding that we could all be doing together. That was
yeah. This is a pretty deep rabbit hole, but hopefully this kind of gave you a good overview of some of the different things that you might run into. Some of these become pretty specific depending on the functionality of what you need to build out. But if you have specific questions about that, ask us and we'll try to show it.
That's what we like to do. So if you've got things you want to learn, you get at us in the forum. MotionDesignHotline.com is the website where you can enjoy all of the various Motion Design Hotline shows, the archive of that, how to send us things. If you want to get at Kyle and I on the internet, I am at EC Abrams. He is at Kylosaurus Rex. We are on Instagram. We're on
Blue Sky.
We're on the Blue Sky. But we're pretty much the same names everywhere on the internet. So if you want to find us there. But yeah, the best way to get us to your problems is MotionDesignHotline.com. Use the form that you see here. Those come right to us. Then we get an email, and then we learn about them.
Check out the Discord too. That also works. But the forum is probably the best.
That's true. There's a wonderful Discord where if you want to tell us how you really feel, you can get into it there. But that'll pretty much do it for us here. There is more shows here on Adobe Live coming up with the rest of your broadcast day. I believe it is Drawing a Blank coming up with Cody Bear and Voodoo Val. According to this thing, it's 3:30 coming up next. So stick around for that. I'm gonna draw some stuff. We've got some fantasy-looking stuff coming up, so that's going to be fun. You know that's what I'm into. So stick around for that. But until next time, stay creative, be kind to each other, and we will see you all around the internet.
Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.